If you or your family is touched by autism, learn more about Fredi's foundation at #PopTheTab at FrediThePizzaMan.com. That's Fredi, thepizzaman.com, or email FrediThePizzaman@gmail.com.
This is Inside the Pizza Oven, the podcast that explores the best, most innovative, and relevant pizzerias and restaurateurs in America. Now here's your host, Fredi the Pizza Man, Fredi Bello.
Hey everyone, welcome back into Inside the Pizza Oven, powered by Fredi the Pizza Man Foundation for Autism. Find the show on iTunes or anywhere you find your podcasts. Also, all social media platforms by searching me, Fredi the Pizza Man. Today's guest, man, I'm excited to talk to this guest today. Bubba Baker, former Detroit Lion, former NFL star, and owner of Bubba's Q Barbecue. So we'll get to him momentarily. We are recording over podcast today. Due to COVID, we decided that, to keep everyone safe, the guests, Mark, my producer, editor, Jansen, myself, just keep everyone safe. We decided to record over podcast for a few weeks till COVID, kind of mellows out a little bit. And then, again, just to, keep everyone safe and just do the right thing. So the show, you can always find it on YouTube. We stream it. Just search Inside the Pizza Oven. You'll find a lot of great past guests on there. The names. We have future guests coming on. Former Detroit Lion Eric Hippo, so he's going to be coming in once COVID dies down a little bit, so we can meet face to face and do a show. We have future shows with Meltdown of WRIF coming out, Matt Shook of Lockdown Pistons, and all the other past shows. Just please subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and all the social media platforms. Just search Inside the Pizza Oven and me, Fredi the Pizza Man. As you know, the show is about Fredi the Pizza Man Foundation. What is that? My foundation for autism. And I encourage you to go to the website and donate. Please help us equip more sensory rooms in the state of Michigan. See the list of 17 schools we've already completed. We have 7 or 8 more on the list. Once we can get into these schools, we are going to, get there and equip their sensory room. So we've equipped over $32,000 worth of equipment in these rooms because of you. Raised nearly $80,000 in less than 5 years because of you. So please go to the website, check it out, learn more about it, donate. And again, we have a lot of schools to still work with, so every penny helps. The equipment does cost a lot of money. But again, because of you, we're able to do this, and we want to keep doing it because the number one goal is to equip a sensory room in every school in the state of Michigan. So that's the goal. So big thank you to the show sponsor, Les Stanford Cadillac Chevrolet, found there in Dearborn, Michigan. Check out their website, lesstanford.com, home of the Corvette, the Corvette King, the great X6 Cadillacs, the SUVs there. They have a lot of great things. Check out all the salesmen there. Ali Rita is a personal favorite of mine. He's been on the show. His past episode, you can find it on YouTube. Number one car salesman in the world, broke at the Guinness Book of World Records. So on the other side, I'm excited. Quick story I'll tell you. 10-year-old kid, I walk into the Silverdome, 1980, 1970. It could have been 1979. I walk into the Silverdome. I go up to the upper deck, probably the third deck or the second deck or whatever it was. I look through the opening, and I still don't. I'll never forget that sight of looking down and seeing all the lights on the Silverdome. The love I had for that place, and the first person I looked for was Bubba Baker. We all have our heroes in life, and for me, I tell anyone your parents should be your heroes. For me, it was obviously my father was my number one hero. Always will be my number one hero. But when it came to sports heroes, 10-year-old kid, Bubba Baker, I'm telling you, he was definitely a sports hero of mine, a guy I always looked out for. And we're going to talk to him about those days. We're going to talk to him about the Bubba and Bo show. He was on the Shark Tank. He's become He's done some great things with barbecue, and I want to talk to him about his draft in 1978. There's some pretty good names in that 1978 draft, and a couple of names that came to the Lions that will surprise you, especially a 6th-round pick from Michigan. And who went first, who the Lions took first that year, you may get a chuckle out of there. And we'll definitely talk about the coaches that he played for. Jim Hanifin was a guy he played for in St. Louis. He just passed away recently, within a week ago. You know I got to ask him about the Hall of Fame because I'm there 1,000%. He should be there. Obviously, Billy Sims, we're going to talk to him about that. And some of the teams that he was on, he was definitely part of the Ernest Biner fumble with the Browns. And doing a little research, when he was with the Vikings, he was with some pretty good Viking teams as well too. So we'll get him on the other side. We're going to talk to him about all of that. And please, again, subscribe, YouTube, iTunes. Just search Inside the Pizza Oven, and or all social media platforms by searching me, Fredi the Pizza Man. And please share, rate, and review. See you on the other side with L. Bubba Baker. All right, welcome back into Inside the Pizza Oven, as promised. And I said it in the intro. And ironically, when I woke up this morning, my kids were sleeping, but my 10-year-old woke up today, and she was the only one up, and I laughed, and I said, honey, you'll never believe this. When I was 10 years old, my father, her grandpa, took me to the Silverdome, and one of my sports heroes, when I walked to the Silverdome, I looked out from the third deck, and I looked for number 60, L. Bubba Baker. L's on the show now. L, how you doing, my friend?
Fredi, I don't even know if I could live up to that honor. May I ask this question? Was that the Silverdome?
Yes, it was the Silverdome, and
okay.
it was because you were drafted in '78, and
correct.
My father took us to every Thanksgiving game, I believe 79 all the way through 89, 90, right around that time.
Wow.
And I was there for the LT interception, so 96 yards or whatever it was, and I said this in the intro, Bubba, your parents should be your heroes, and my father is always my hero, will always be my hero. But when I was a 10-year-old kid, you were my sports hero. I looked for you when I walked to the Silverdome. I just, you just had that presence about you. You had that big smile to you, and just from talking to you a few times this week, and we're going to talk a lot more, you still have it. It's amazing.
Man, I'm super honored because, athletes, they're people, and if you bring to the sport the light, and I'm not talking about just COVID or elections or whatever challenges we face as Americans, because it was the 80s back then. It was, we were going into the 80s and we were changing of presidents back there, and so it was always some uncomfort to it. But as an athlete, I think it's your responsibility to, number one, be the light. That's number one. And what I mean by the light, you should have a smile on your face. I was that fat 11-year-old kid that looked at the Cleveland Browns versus the Dallas Cowboys one day and said, hey, I want to do that when I grow up.
Yep.
And I was blessed. God blessed me and gave me that opportunity. So what I tried to bring along with a nasty attitude as a defensive end, frankly, that's part of it. And the game was nasty then because, the running backs could chop your legs, the tight ends would, the tackle would post you and the tight end would chop you and try and hurt you, to keep you from harming their quarterback. And it was your duty on the field to have none of that. That's just not going to fly with me, that kind of an attitude. But off the attitude, you did need to have a sense of gratitude so the people around you, as you're saying, could be enlightened by the joy that you have. And certainly from playing with Doug English and John Woodcock, Dave Purefoy, Bill Gay. Those are lasting relationships, and we still text each other. Well, John Woodcock's no longer with us, but, these are people. Dave Purefoy went to be with the Lord. I mean, this is what sports. I can't talk about basketball and baseball and hockey, soccer, but in football, it's about the camaraderie and that big smile that you spoke of. I loved playing for the Detroit Lions fans in the Silver Dome. And to hear people, I mean, I spoke to somebody recently, and they were from Detroit, and I live in Florida now. And the guy was in a Walmart. We had on masks. I had on a Lions shirt. And the guy down the aisle screamed out, "Kill, Bubba, kill." I got chills down my body. I'm 63, and I couldn't even get in a stance if I wanted to. but Fredi, I think if an athlete misses that, then he missed the boat, because I've just been sharing this. You know, my faith is in Jesus. You know, I'm a faithful man, and I recently came across an art called Shungjin by a guy named Master Lee, and Shungjin just simply means unconditional love. And once I started to read about it and share it with my wife and share it with my children, and I was like, guys, this is what life's about. And when we lose that love, unconditional love, now that doesn't mean you got to go back to somebody that's done you wrong or been, you know what I mean? That has no.
You learn from wrong as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great teacher. Yeah. This guy, he talks about this Master Lee. He talks about it's spelled Qi, and it's called Chi, and Chi is love. And if it's one thing we could use right now, Fredi, is a whole lot of love.
Oh man, you're not
you
kidding.
And I, we don't have to agree, but we do have to respect and love each other as human beings. And that's kind of, when you tell me that, it makes me feel like I'm headed in the right direction. You know what I mean? That's my purpose in life. That's what I didn't come here to play football. That's over.
Yeah.
But that was my vehicle to get in front of young 10-year-olds like yours. And the second thing to go with it, you are to never turn down signing an autograph for a fan.
Yeah.
Never. I don't care where you are. You have to do it.
Yep, and there's some I'm 50 years old. There's some past athletes here. We won't mention names, and you hear people walk into my restaurant all the time, and they'll tell me like when I reached out and said you were going to be on the show, all the feedback that I got, that they just were excited to hear your voice, and a lot of players root for teams, a lot of fans root for teams, a lot of fans root for players. I root for the Lions. Okay, so for a long time, but there's players I root for. I always rooted for you. I rooted for Barry Sanders. And it just, you brought that out in fans. The Lions never won, and you brought that out in fans. That means a lot. It really does. And I'm just honored to have you on. And I was going to tell you, I was going to say something to you at the beginning, and I forgot. I'm guessing the theme of this interview is going to be attitude is everything. Because I watched you on the Bubba and Bo show. We're going to talk about that on your YouTube channel. Attitude is everything. Bubba, watching you cooking that pork butt, I swear it made my day. It really did.
Well, see, that's my passion. That's what I grew up with. And I'm a family man, and to get a chance to work with my daughter, somebody sent us a picture of her. She was about 7 days old, and we did a shoot for Sports Illustrated, and I was able to look at that picture. She actually sent it to me, and it brought me to tears because it allowed me to say to her, she's 35, very independent, runs a food truck, and it allowed me to say to her, you see that picture, baby? I still got you in the palm of my hands. I got your back. Just now. You don't listen so much beforehand. You know what I mean? I'm like a consultant.
Yeah.
It's after you do things your way, I'm still here. It's just you don't live under my roof now, and you don't work for me at my Bubba's Q. You have your own Bubba's Q food truck. And really, it's so important that your kids, and you said you have young kids, that they understand why dad is gone so much. You know? And that was my toughest part, explaining to my kids and my daughter and I think you saw that you saw the pork butt where we just shot a second episode, and it was a ham, and my daughter made the family's macaroni and cheese. And my daughter remembered that my wife and I had her shred a block of sharp cheese 5 o'clock in the morning while we worked, and she had to cut the potatoes for the au gratin potatoes. These were very popular items in our catering. And when she was growing up, she hated it. She hated it. Yeah. So guess what my granddaughter does? My granddaughter, she's 13. About a year and a half ago, she started working on a food cut. She shreds the block of cheddar cheese. She cuts the potatoes. And I asked my daughter, I said, well, you do know they have shredded cheese now. She was like, yeah, but Dad, it gave me responsibility.
Yeah. You know, my kid, you know, Bubba, you said a few things there. You know, I'm gone all the time too. Sometimes, you know, my kids are 10, 8, and 6. Sometimes I feel like a failure as a father because I'm not around a lot. And I always harp. I always tell them structure and routine. I said, if you're ever going to learn anything from Daddy, structure and routine. And when you say that about the responsibility, it's true. They remember those things.
Absolutely. And Fredi, more importantly than anything, the company that I run with, I always tell people this: the best leaders lead by example.
Yep.
You know, you can't tell kids one thing and do another. And you know, it's so important to me, like the way we lead it off. We led off the show. I am still that same 19, 20-year-old that wants to please, whether it be in the restaurant business, which I just retired from after 47 years of owning my own places, you know, and working holidays and getting up early. And like I just told you today, I was putting out a fire for my daughter for her food truck. And you know, and basically my daughter was like, can you and Mom come and help? I was like, no, this is what we talk about. Like you said, you know, you got to have a routine. You got to have a backup. And I said, we discussed this. And I said, you know, Mom and Dad, we're done with those days, man. We can't get out there and hustle like you can. You're 35.
Yeah.
And she called me back. She thanked me. And she said, you know what? I got some money. I said, yeah, I knew you could. You know, but if I would have taken that opportunity from you, and plus we're cheap labor. We're free.
Yeah. I know.
You know, so Fredi, that's my contribution back to the game, and that is everything that I do now. I still think about them same Lions fans and the people like yourself. I never want to let you down. And again, you know, these things happen to 19, 20, 21-year-old young men because they just don't know. But one of the things that I wanted to never do is I never wanted a Lion fan to read about me in a car doing something wrong or, you know, drunken driving or involved with drugs or.
Especially today,
you know,
today's game, social media.
Well, thank God, hey Fredi, thank God there was no cell phone.
Yeah, I know.
That's a tough one, way to go. But you know, I think it's good to want to please. The same way when people come into Fredi's Pizza, you want them to enjoy it. I mean, that's one of the things that I did. I'd go around at the table and say, "Hey, how do you like it?" Because if you don't like it, I'll take it back and get you something different. And that's how your heart has to be in life. Your heart has to be open. If your heart's not open, if you're a person that doesn't care, I do not want you on my team. Yeah. I say that again. If you don't care, I don't want you on my team.
Yeah.
And my children will tell you that. My children are now 35 and 30, and their parents. And Fredi, it's so ironic to hear them coaching the same way I coach them. And that, to me, is true satisfaction. Whether it be in your family or in the corporate world, you have got to lead by example. You've got to be the first one in and the last one to leave. And you've got to be that guy that's sincere, and you've got to be consistent. And so, you know, these are the things that I think whatever your business is, if you just sell widgets, if you take those kinds of things, if you lead by example, you know, if you're consistent and if you work hard, things kind of go your way. Not always, because that's not the way of life. but at least you will be consistent. You will confront your challenges. You will confront your problems. Like David in the Bible, you'll take on your Goliaths. You won't run from them. You'll run to them. And so those are the things that I believe. And to this day, I'll be 64 in December, and I still get up in the morning. I still have a routine. You know, I recently had major surgery to my spine. It was a 9-hour operation.
Wow.
I was in a car accident. And I have to remind myself every day, I have to be grateful and remind myself, you could be in a wheelchair or worse, be grateful. Put a smile on your face. And that's how I found this art called Shungjin, because it's about love. It's about having a smile on your face, even in the face of adversity. And that's where you'll hear me say at the close of any cooking show or anything I'm on, I always remind people, attitude is everything.
Yep.
It's got to be the foundation for everything that we do. You know, we can't control what happens to us, but we got 100% control of how we go about accepting our challenges, man.
Joining us on Inside the Pizza Oven, the great Bubba Baker. We're going to get into your football life because a lot of people ask me questions, but first we got to talk about the Bubba and Bo show on YouTube. Now, I'm assuming Bo is your daughter because I thought that might have been your granddaughter, but that's your daughter.
No, Bo is my daughter.
Okay.
And when she was in her mom's belly, it was spelled B-E-A-U.
Yeah.
And when we didn't, you know, back then we didn't want to know what babies were.
Yeah.
From the old school, you didn't want to know. It was kind of something that your parents didn't know. You know, I'm sure if they would have known what I look like, they would have backed out of the deal. But I for all these years, I had gone to the Cardinals, and I would get a game ball and I would get it to Bo, B-E-A-U, and I thought that she was going to be a boy, and my wife wanted to present me with a boy. And because we had all my cousins were girls, and very few boys in the family. All my brothers had girls, and nobody had a boy yet. And so, boy, we just knew, Brittany, Bo was going to be a boy. And she came out of there, you know, and I was still looking for her junk to fall out. And I was a doctor. He's a great doctor, and I had been referring to her as Bo, and he started calling her Bo. And so when she came out, the movie had just came out with Bo Derek.
Oh yeah.
And so it was an easy swing. I just said, all right, well, we'll go with the B-O. And as it turns out, she was the boy that I always wanted, until my son was born. And she still whooped on him like she was a boy, and still does to this day. I still don't think she can whoop her brother, but she is the toughest woman, strongest. Obviously, you've seen her on the show, beautiful. But man, does she have an edge. And she's single mom. And I always say to my wife, the guy that she meets, he's gonna have to be a special guy. He's gonna have to be one of those guys that doesn't mind being pushed around in a baby car.
Sounds like my 6-year-old. She's got a little edge to her.
That way. So, that's where the bowl came in, and the show is about our heritage. And see, I grew up in a barbecue family, and you and I both know when you're in the business, you almost have to cater to what people's expectations are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to make that pizza a certain way. And then once you get established, then you can come out with your specials, with artichoke hearts on them and mozzarella. But what people know is they know pepperoni and they know cheese and they know this. And then you slip in on them, something special, and or cauliflower pizza roll,
pineapple,
healthy, or wheat. You can't just come out with that and make those your staples. You've got to present to people what they know.
Yes.
We've been doing that in my family. I've been doing that for 47 years. And the cooking show allows me to go back to my foundation. Like if you were to talk about your grandmother's recipes, I openly discuss, you've seen it.
Yes.
We talk about the humor of it. And we have a glass of wine, and I'm not a big drinker, but we have a glass of wine on it. I'm on QVC. I can't have wine. I can't taste the food.
That's right.
So we wanted to do something original, and that's what this YouTube station is about. And our platform is, like we talked about, man, it's about being ourselves in the kitchen. You get what I'm saying? It's about being original. And I think you saw, I hope that came out.
No, it did come out because I have a funny story. I want you to tell a funny story from one of the episodes that I watched, and I want people to go. The Bubba and Bo Show on YouTube. That's Bubba and Bo, B-O, show on YouTube. Subscribe. But you told a funny story. How did the pork butt get its name?
Yeah. You know, everybody thinks that the pork butt comes from the butt of the pig, which that's the ham, actually. You know, that's that back part of it, his hind. That's where ham is. The butt actually comes from the shoulder, and the history of it is when alcohol illegally came into Boston, it was in barrels.
Yep.
So what somebody smart learned to do was to keep those barrels that were called butt barrels. And so the meat guys found out that those things were airtight, and you couldn't, alcohol wouldn't seep out of it, and neither could customs smell the alcohol. Everybody said that they were pickles. So what happened? Well, when they start putting those pork shoulders in the barrel, they got the name of pork butts out of the name from the barrel. Yeah. Cool story.
Yeah, it is.
And a whole bunch of people from YouTube and under my Facebook called me, and they were disappointed. They were like, man, I thought I was cooking a butt all this time. I was like, I'm surprised your butcher didn't tell you this story, because, again, the shoulder. And I want to say one other thing so people don't get confused. It's at the top part of the shoulder. Down on the side of the shoulder is the picnic ham. You know, and so, that's what people have to understand. These are pieces that were given names by butchers. And so it's a cool little story, man.
How often do you eat barbecue, Bubba?
You know what, Fredi? I'm almost embarrassed to say this.
Don't be embarrassed. I eat pizza every day. Don't be embarrassed.
You know what? I may have barbecue now that I'm out of the business and I don't have to taste anymore.
Yeah.
I literally only do, like, when I go on the truck, or the trucks, I should say, my daughter has multiple trucks, I only want to check the quality of the recipes because it has my name on it. You know what I mean? So I'll go on and I'll tear off a piece of the pork butt, right before they pull it, or I always slice into the brisket. But more importantly, the thing that I check the most is what we just did on our second episode, which is really cool because I think we improved back. Football, we learned to include the audience more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We engage the audience more. We tell more stories. I won't ruin it for those of you that's going to go check it out. But I think, the key to it is, the reason, I should say, as I get older, I have to be more concerned about what I eat, how I have it, and how often I have it. And barbecue is, my passion.
I know.
So I don't have it as much. But I'll give you an example. I live in a condo in Clearwater Beach. And when I moved into the condo about a month ago, there's these HOAs and all these organizations. I went up to the one lady in charge and I said, you guys got an electric grill out back? And she looked at me and she's like, yeah, isn't it neat? I was like, you want me to be honest? I said, you want me to be honest? My wife says I need to kind of go along with it, with the flow. And she said, no, I want you to be absolutely honest. I said, I am shocked that you don't have a smoker or a grill, at least a Weber, something with some real flavor in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to go through all this stuff to get these guys to agree. The first time I put on a beef brisket, I am not kidding you, man. My neighbors were begging me, I'll pay you whatever.
Yeah.
I'll give you $1,000. I was like, it's not that. I'll give you a little tiny piece of it.
Yeah.
And I literally wound up giving away about 95% of the brisket, and I came upstairs to my wife. I said, well, now we know we don't have to freeze it. That's how, and I'm sure you're like that with your pizza.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I am with barbecue now.
Yeah.
I don't taste it every day. I don't eat it. I put my eyes on it. And certainly if you go to Bubba'sBonelessRibs.com, I mean, we discuss this every Wednesday. It's out of Sweetsboro, New Jersey, where they make our product. And that came from the appearance on Shark Tank. We always talk about it. You and I know this. To establish quality, you have to have an attitude of constant improvement. You got to look at yourself, and you got to say, is Joe, the last kid that I hired, a man that came on, or a woman, do they make that pizza the same way I am? Because I sure don't want anybody to say, well, Al, I'm coming here on Thursday. Is that the day you work? You want to be consistent, and you want to have a culture of constant improvement. And that, for a lot of people, Fredi, that's a delicate area. When you correct and you walk up and say, no, I want 22 pieces of pepperoni on that, that's the portion control. This is what I want it to look like. And I guarantee you got pictures somewhere behind in your kitchen so they know what your pizza looks like.
Well, I can tell you, Bubba, I'm like a light switch. When I come into work, light switch on, I'm a total different person. I'm always a good person, but I'm intense. I'm a perfectionist, and I'm always trying to improve. And I've been doing this for so long. And then when the light switch goes off, I go home. I'm a different person. I let go, But when you're in the restaurant business, man, when you're in the restaurant business, you got to be on top all the time, because when you are on top, that's when they come for you, man. That's when they come for you, and you have to be prepared.
Amen.
The key to life is being prepared. That's another thing I tell my kids all the time. You got to be prepared for anything. Even for something that you don't know what's coming, you got to be prepared, because when you are prepared, you have a better chance of succeeding. And that's just anything in life, So I sometimes really believe this, and I know it'll sound funny to most, but I really believe high school should have a class. Everyone should work in the restaurant business, because you learn so much from a restaurant business. Whether you own it, whether you work there, whatever you do there, you learn so much dealing with people. The restaurant business, the quality can be the greatest. But if you don't know how to deal with people, whether it's your customers, your employees, you'll never make it. You just never will.
Hey, you couldn't have said that better, man. And I just want to say one more time for everybody, go to the Bubba and Bo Cooking Show. I'm the same way I am on the air as I am now. And Fredi, I hope you saw it. I mean, I enjoyed the interaction with the people and sharing my family's recipes. And I had a guy instant message me last week, and he said that bakered potato with that pulled pork on it, he said I could taste it. And he said, whatever you do, man, continue. And you and your daughter laughing and poking fun. And I want to kind of give you a segue to episode 2. We're doing a ham, and I tell a story about ham because there's a lot in it. But I actually slipped, and Fredi, I'm sure you can relate to this. I actually made a confession on the air about somebody very special to me, about how they prepared something that I was preparing that day. And it just kind of, it came out. And the producer was like, hey, we got to keep that. I was like, oh, no. And she's like, but I thought that person was passed. I was like, yeah, that's even worse, because I don't want to visit from her.
Yeah.
So we are out to educate people, debunk old myths about barbecuing. Barbecuing doesn't have to be about, and I'm sure you hear this, if you could find a way to make a great tasting smoked brisket that doesn't involve 18 hours. I don't know how this all came about. Yes, we cook our barbecue for 20 hours. Okay. What does that have to do with the taste, though?
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're trying to teach people that there are ways you can make it, and you don't have to be intimidated by the word barbecue. You know what I mean? I mean, there's ways that we make it, and we make it on air. And you see I finished that pork butt in the oven, wrapped in foil. the last 5 or 6 hours, it tastes the same as it did if I'd have left it on the smoker for, like some people are saying now, 18 hours. Good luck with that when it comes to your energy costs. But, you know, that's what we're there to do. We're there to have fun, debunk some of the myths, show people that, you know what, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to make ribs. You know, we haven't done that yet, but, you know, that's why we came out with the Bubba and Bo cooking show, and to show people, don't be intimidated when it comes to cooking. By the way, it's yours. Make it your own way. Be original.
I love how you told your daughter when she cut the potato, oh, you did the zigzag like they do at barbecues.
Right. Yeah, you stole it. And then that's how she does it on the truck. And, you know, but Fredi, I really believe that going back to Shangjian, if you're not having fun at what you're doing, then it's a job. And, you know, people don't do so well if it's just a job. If it's something that you can enjoy, I am so passionate in the kitchen. I am so passionate when it comes to serving others.
Yeah.
And upholding that culture of constant improvement. You know, I'm always asking my daughter about her food costs. She tells me about something she's doing. I'm like, yeah, but tell me about the numbers. Give me the cost, so you can know where you stand every single day. It's a business, baby. And I tell her that same thing you just mentioned. You know, the food could be off the charts, but if your service is not on point, people will go somewhere else and eat mediocre food that has great service.
Yep.
So you got to be on point on all ends, and don't ever forget that you are there for the customer, not the other way around. You're there. They chose you. They chose the Bubba's Cute Food Trust. And you need to never, ever, ever forget, no matter how difficult that customer is, no matter what they do, that customer is going to be there, and that customer is going to be gone. And if they don't like your service, they're going to tell more than 10 people. If they do, they'll tell 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And those are the odds.
Yeah. I live to serve people, and, you know, I take more passion and more pride into that. And I tell my waitress all the time, if the food's good, you don't even have to advertise. They'll advertise for you. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to print flyers. You don't have to do anything. But I'll tell you one thing, they will notice. If you're ringing up a customer at the register and there's someone standing behind them to order next, and you're sitting there jibber-jabbering with that person, they'll remember that you didn't say hi to them. And how many times I have to tell them, just say, listen, say hi to the person, say thank you for waiting. I'll be with you in a second. That's all you have to do. But if you don't,
all you have to do, man.
If you don't, they'll remember that more than your pizza was crap. I'm telling you. So
yeah,
I'm very passionate.
Good stuff, Fredi. I'm glad to hear that, you know, that you have that kind of passion. I can't wait till the next time I'm back in Michigan. By the way, my wife's from Detroit, so I consider that one of my homes, man. That and the you know, playing for the Lions, that there's no arguing it. So I'm not offending anybody at the Cardinals, which were in St. Louis at the time. That's how long ago I played, you know, before Arizona. It's no offense to Minnesota, and it's certainly no offense to Cleveland, where I lived for 32 years before moving to Florida. And you know, Detroit is who I identify with. I am a Detroit Lion, and if God is willing, and I do go into the Hall of Fame, you know, as much as my name comes up, I've learned to be a good bridesmaid.
That was the biggest question to me, is tell Bubba he should be in the Hall of Fame, which, you know, we're going to get into that, but you should be there. And we can talk about it later. You can tell me now. You should be there, Bubba. You should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to give you a name, okay? And I didn't mean to cut you off, but Jason Taylor from the Miami Dolphins just went into the Hall of Fame. Okay, I don't have his numbers in front of me. I don't need his numbers. Okay, they're probably close to yours. He got in the Hall of Fame. Why aren't you in the Hall of Fame?
There's 2 things that I think involve the length of the time before you come in, and I'm saying this as an argument, you know, as a sitting in the barbershop type thing to kind of to mess around with. You opened up the show by stating it as a Lions fan. Number one, we didn't win any games.
Yeah.
And a Hall of Famer, no matter how you look at it, a Hall of Fame player, his contributions lead to his team winning games. You can't argue that. You look at those years of the Miami Dolphins, and you look at Jason Taylor. That's number one. And number two, it's another argument point. You know, I don't have anybody to discuss this with because I'm surrounded by women, girls, my mother-in-law, my wife, my
You can discuss it with me.
Yeah. And so the second part of it, whether or not you won, was this. Did your offense, right, have you in a position where you got an average to rush the passer because you were in the lead? And rarely were we in that position. We had some great offenses at home, you know, on Thanksgiving Day, which last Thursday was a disappointment. And I can't say I was surprised to hear about Matt Patricia. You know, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed at the way they played. And so should Lions fans. You know, again, a culture of constant improvement. They didn't look like they'd ever played a game on Thursday. That's another story. But I'm just saying to you, think about it. If you play for a team and your offense doesn't turn the ball over and you're leading 17-7, now they got to throw the ball. And that's where people get into the Hall of Fame. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I understand.
So it's not in your control, but I was never a part of that kind of a Detroit Lions. And to be honest with you, if Russ Thomas were alive today, there was a guy, God, he had a car dealership. I can't remember his name. Mel Farr. They were in a meeting in 1980 when I walked out of camp. And I told them this, and I want Lions fans to understand this. I told them, I said, hey, listen, the losing is wearing on me. It's affecting me personally in my relationships. And I don't know how much of this I'm going to be able to take. Just losing and coming in here and having to listen to, you know, loser speeches. I'm like, I'm depressed.
Yeah.
I'm sad. I came here to the National Football League to win football games. What do we need to do to win? And you know, a lot of people told me, Fredi, you know, that's not your position. I'm like, hey, well, if I don't care, if we don't care as players, who's going to care? And you know, unfortunately, we have not yet found that culture in Detroit to break that habit. Like we all just feel like, okay, here we go. Here comes a disappointment. I think that's all in the culture of constant improvement, and they just haven't had it. There is one great improvement, and that is I think the organization goes about hiring now. Like Mrs. Ford, Miss Firestone said before she stepped down, I don't know anything about football. So she went out and she got a consultant. And it just so happens that, not the right guys that she brought in have worked.
It was a disaster.
But they're going about the process in the right way. We all expected Matt Patricia to bring on some of the New England success. And, you know, unfortunately, I don't think that he had that one little element where the players wanted to play for him.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I don't know if you're on social media, but yesterday, 10 of them, they were ecstatic. I mean, when do you see athletes go on social media and say, the Lions just did the best thing? Bye-bye, Matt Patricia. I mean, the things they were saying, you know, they weren't being disrespectful, but the things that
they were being honest.
They were being honest. They were being honest. The things that were being said. I mean, as a fan, I've seen Bob Quinn in year-end pressers talk down the fans. Like, you haven't won anything here, and the fans, you know, the fans deserve this. And I don't think you understand what we've been going through. I understand you come from New England, but I don't think you understand what we've been going through. And that Matt Patricia was making fun of the reporters for not sitting in a chair right, and it was a disaster from the get-go, Bubba. And to hear you say that you went with Russ Thomas, man, for a fan, that means a lot, because people were upset with Barry when they left, because they said Barry didn't speak up. Maybe he did behind closed doors, Calvin Johnson's another one, a great player like you. Now, the conversation, is he going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer? And someone called into a radio show the other day, and I tell you this, he says, Bubba Baker should be in the Hall of Fame before Calvin Johnson. Bubba Baker should. And people are saying Calvin Johnson should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I'm thinking, why not Bubba Baker? Why not Bubba Baker? It's just,
I'm flattered. I just think, I know this is going to sound weird. I actually live, and before COVID, I started to run into some of the guys at Tampa Bay. And remember the old North Division with us and the Vikings and the Bears and, of course, Tampa and Green Bay. And if you remember when you were a little boy, our conference wasn't called the Central. We were referred to as the Black and Blue Division.
Yeah, 100%.
Remember that?
Of course.
We weren't the North and all that. We were the Central Division, but we were called the Black and Blue, and we were that. And it's really funny. When I first moved down here like 4 years ago, I was in a Costco's, and I saw a guy up in front of me, and he was limping. And obviously this was well before COVID, and he was limping. And he had kind of that statue that players look like. He had a certain confidence about him. And I walked up to him, and I said, "Oh, wow." I said, "Hey, are you?" He said, Hell, yeah. And he said, "You Bubba Baker?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You made life hard on me." That was my Hall of Fame jacket, because my wife was with me, and she smiled. My wife didn't even know football, but she smiled, and she never lets me forget when these ballots come up and I don't make it, or as of late, my name came up for the
good for her.
The seniors, because I'm 25 years out of the league. Now, you have 5 years before you're eligible. And now if you do the math, 2020 made it 30 years for me. So now I'm in the abyss, with all the other players. And this year, Drew Pearson, and he deserves it.
Yeah.
I would thought he was in the Hall of Fame. Drew Pearson is the senior from the Dallas Cowboys. And
his teams won.
Pearson in the Hall of Fame? He's going in the Hall of Fame because the Dallas Cowboys won.
Yeah.
Did Bubba Baker make the Lions win? I don't care what anybody says. Well, you're just a defensive end. But did I cause the Lions to win? And I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. Did Lawrence Taylor cause the Giants to win? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, see, one player can make a difference. And you have to be able to look at that Hall of Famer. Did Joe DeLamielleure make a difference in blocking for O.J. Simpson?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't do a very good job after O.J. got out, but
yeah.
He should have blocked for him when he got out. But while O.J. was running for 2,000 yards in 14 games, Joe DeLamielleure had a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
And he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And you go on and on. You ask yourself, I have a personal story. I was Defensive Lineman of the Year in 1978 with a guy named John Hanna from the University of Alabama.
Great player.
And John Hanna and I never faced each other. John Hanna played guard on the other side, played right guard. He was 6'2". He was 305 pounds, and he was built like a spark plug.
New England Patriots.
Yeah. So do you know to play the trap, right? You know what a trap is,
of course.
Right? You get a pass rusher, you let that guy go up the field because he's quarterback happy, tackle blocks down, you pull the guard, and you hope to catch him off guard. Well, I was pass rush happy. I think I had 13 sacks with like 7 or 8 games to go, and so people started doing other things, and I knew the technique. I knew if that tackle blocked down, boy, close down or something bad's gonna happen. So we go up to New England and we get this guy who was a backup to the tackle, and when I saw he was going to be the guy that had the task of blocking me, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to go crazy. First, third, and long, tackle goes down. I fly up the field looking at Grogan, and the next time I woke up, Ken Frobb had the smelling sauce under my nose. I'm not lying. He knocked me out. But worse than that, it was when I was facing our bench. And everybody was like, come on, Bubba, come on, Bubba. First series, he hit me so hard, the next thing that hit the ground was my head. And Howard Cosell said this. My mom was watching. I think he's dead.
Dude, you played in a cement and a Silverdome. People forget about that.
This was up in New England. It had snowed. But I mean, he hit me in the ear hole.
Yeah.
I didn't see him. I didn't care to see him. I didn't read my keys. And I never, ever did that again for the next 13 years. I never, whenever my key went down, I went down. I was like, hey, I'll catch it the next time when it isn't passed. But it was it was, what I'm saying to you is, guys like that, John Hanna, he left me with a lasting impression of what happens if you don't read your keys in the National Football League. And to this day, when I see a kid with number 73 on, I go, oh. I get a little shaky and jump up and down like, okay, here comes Hanna. But that's what Hall of Fame represents. And so, when my day comes, if I'm around and that happens, that'll be fine. But until then, I'd like to think there's a couple of quarterbacks around that, you say Bubba Baker, and they do the same thing that I do when you say John Hanna. They go, oh, my gosh, that guy was a player. That's more important than what the thought process should be. It's the impact that you made on the game. And unfortunately, you and I know, I think Billy and I were talking about this about a year ago, Billy Sims. Yeah. And we were at the Lions at an event, and Billy said, it's hard to believe that, my first year we were 4-12. I was like, 4-12? He's like, yeah. I was like, wait a minute. All them touchdowns you scored? He's like, yeah, man, we ain't win. Yeah. And then that one year, the year those idiots made that another one bites the dust, we were 7-0. We needed to win one game.
Oh, you answered. You're gonna. That was my next question. What was your thought on that? On the another one bites the dust.
I absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
It was David Hill. It was James Hunter, who went to be with the Lord, and it was another guy. David Hill, James Hunter.
I heard Doug English saying this.
Spider-Man.
Doug English said the same
Allen
thing.
Is the one
yeah.
Jimmy came from Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And he was into all that. He was in all of those rhymes, and he was into he would talk to a receiver and tell him he'd go up to he was a safety, and he'd go up to the receiver and he'd tell the receiver, you ain't catching nothing today because my boy Hound Dog gonna shut you down. I mean he brought that to the Detroit Lions, and frankly, we hadn't had it. And he brought it, but he lived it. He lived it on and off the field. Yeah. And that another one bites the dust was the worst possible thing that could have happened to us after we got off to that start and we were 7-1. And then the second half of the season, we fell apart. But the worst part of it was the defensive line. We had not given up 100 yards to any back, and that includes Walter Payton, right?
Yeah.
We go to play the Tampa Bay Bucks. The last game of the season, we needed to win at home. We gave up 150 yards to a guy named Mike Burns, who never, ever played. Tom Burns from Nebraska. He never, ever played another game, started another game in the NFL.
Jeez.
And there's a lesson to that, Freddie.
Yeah.
And that was, we didn't come to play. We just expected to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home. And they had a backup quarterback because earlier in the year, me and Pearford had, not on purpose, but we had broken the jaw of Doug Williams, and he just never really recovered. He couldn't play. I mean, his mouth was wired, and he was messed up the rest of the year. And that was the Lions, and that was the thing. That is the thing. Whomever it is that comes in there, they're going to have to be a mixture of Matt Patricia at the high end of how he and I heard this years ago when I first came back, how he spoke to players. He didn't talk to them like they were men. I'm just going to leave it at that. And then I can't remember the black coach's name right before him. Who was that I lose track of his name? He was the friend of the coaches, the players. The
Jim
players
Caldwell.
just loved him.
Jim Caldwell.
Who?
Jim Caldwell.
Jim Caldwell. I loved him. He was a great guy.
Yeah.
But he was too far in the green.
Yes.
And the guys that do it, they kind of know where that, you know what I mean? They know how to go over into that danger zone. But if you're winning, then they trust you. But if you're losing, and I'll tell you one particular story, that's when I knew he lost the team. And it was when the rumor broke about the guy that was an all-pro named Slay, and he made them go outside and practice when they were going to play in a inside game.
Yep.
And I thought, that's dumb. Why? Well, that takes away from your focus of, you're not preparing for the game that you're playing. You're playing on the AstroTurf. Why would you take your players out because it's cold? That's not going to make a guy tougher. If he's not tough, that sure is not going to do it. But Slay spoke out, and I was, you know what I'm saying?
And they got rid of him.
I was proud of him. You remember when that happened?
Of course I remember. I follow all the things here. To me, here's the way I look at it, Bubba, is the smartest guy in the room act, okay? And I think you understand when I say that. You're going to come in and you're going to point fingers and you're going to tell, this is the way we're doing it, and you're not going to tell me otherwise. That doesn't fly with professional athletes. It just doesn't fly. I'm not a professional athlete or coaches.
Neither does that work with your assistant coaches, because they're the ones that have to carry your message, man.
Yes.
Yeah. And I heard a whole bunch of stories. Again, when I come back there, 30 years, this year would be 30 years removed from the National Football League. 1990 was my last year. But 40 some odd years from my days in my peak at the Lions. And when I would hear that kind of stuff, it's kind of like whenever my children would fight, I would always, say, no, we're not going to be fighting as Bakers. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I had always approached when guys would gossip about, well, did you hear about this? And then they're like, hey, man, let's enjoy this alumni weekend, because nothing that I say or do is going to help, Ziggy Ansah. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to encourage these guys, pat them on the back, and regardless of what I'm thinking under my breath, I'm thinking, boy, this is the same Lions when I was here, to hear those kinds of things.
Bubba, when you went to Russ Thomas, say, listen, I'm tired of the losing. What did he say to you? Is that why you left, or?
Well, it was there where it could have been that it was a diluted comment, because there was always a disparity in my contract.
Yeah.
When I went to my first Pro Bowl, guys like Joe Green and other guys that were in the Pro Bowl. I'm happy to share this. My first year in Detroit in 1978, my bonus was $25,000, and my first year was $25,000.
Oh my!
They signed me to a 5-year deal: 25, 27.5, 30, 32, and then that 5th year I was going to make the big money, $50,000. Well, the first year I led the league. All 5 years I led the National Football League in sacks. And my philosophy
23.
that I went in to actually talk to Russ, and he had Mel Farr there, who I didn't think he was much help, and Chuck Schmidt, and I went in there without a lawyer, and my conversation to them was, you guys already heard the stories about how hard I work. I come to work every morning, and I run 6 miles in the Silverdome. Then I get dressed, I have my meal, and then I come to work every day, And if we were to set that as the benchmark, we're going to have a much better football team. That was number one. It was like, hey, I'm the guy. You want to say, hey, if you guys come to work and you play like Bubba, he plays hurt, he plays hard, he plays every down. That
Lead
was
by example.
That was my pitch to him. And secondly, I said to him, I said, guys, the losing is wearing me. And when I didn't get any response, I didn't expect them to tear up my contract right then and there. But this wasn't the first time I had spoken with them. Monty Clark had told me, hey, that's above my pay grade. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put that in my file, and I'm going to remember that you told me that as the head coach. Yeah. That's above your pay grade. He didn't say that exactly, but he pretty much saying, I don't have anything to do with the contract.
Yeah, I understand.
And
it's just amazing. So, it's amazing how this organization has let so many great players go. It just, as a fan, it's just amazing how many great players they have let go.
Well, I demanded to go. And not only for that year, I just knew that I went from being a guy who was the first person over at the Silver Dome because I could not believe I was in the National Football League, and I say this in jokingly, but back then weights weren't the big thing. Weights were just coming on, so I was a runner because I wanted not to ever get tired. I wanted to wear that big fat guy down.
Yeah.
And, come to 2-minute drill when there was an actual 2-minute drill. It wasn't a commercial drill for TV. Back in those days, you got a guy in front of you, and he was a 280, I know it sounds funny because that'd be too small now, but a 285, 290-pound guy, he was tired. There was no timeout. They're trying to drive the ball down and, get a touchdown, and I'm rushing the passer. I wanted to make sure I never got tired. Matter of fact, I wanted to make sure I never put my hands on my hips or bent over anything because I wanted that guy in front of me to know I'm coming. And you better be there. Like they say in Tombstone, I'm coming and I'm bringing hell with me.
Go ahead. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That was how I played. I knew I could force that guy into making a mistake. And then after he made one, I was going to press him to the fact that, to the point that where he made another one. Because if you're out there tackle, you sack the quarterback, everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows you just got beat. And now that psychologically wears on you. And then we, start doing twists and games. That guy's looking for you and you're going somewhere else. And we had the makings. We had a great defensive line, which leads me, Fredi, to the biggest lesson that I ever learned. And it was the saddest lesson. I was still the same committed player when I left Detroit to go play for the then St. Louis Cardinals. But I never found another Doug English or another Dave Purefoy or another Curly Culp or a Bill Gay or John Woodcock. And that just tells you that how important chemistry is.
Yep.
And in the corporate world, I talk about it all the time. I talk about team players. I'd rather have a moderate person that'll give me their all than to have a smarty pants but magna cum laude that shows up when he wants to.
I was doing a little digging. Your 1978 draft, when you were drafted by the Lions in the second round, coming out of college. I wanted to ask you, what your thoughts were. Did you think you were going to get drafted in the first round? But here's some names that went in the draft. And I didn't pull out a lot of names, but Earl Campbell went number 1 in that draft. Okay. A guy I loved watching, and ironically, the Tampa Bay traded that pick to Houston. Why? Who knows why? But Earl Campbell, Ozzie Newsome was in that draft. James Lofton was in that draft, and a guy named Todd Christensen, which was a really good tight end at the time. He was actually ahead of the game. He's more like the tight ends you see today. He used to catch a lot of balls, and those some big names.
Brigham Young, Todd was a great. We played against each other in the Western Athletic Conference, which is now called the Mountain. Yeah, I know Todd well.
Yeah. So Colorado State, how was your days at Colorado State? What did you think about the draft when the NFL draft came around to pick your name?
Well, it was the best thing, not then, but like a lot of things. First of all, we had no combine. So I flew around to teams like Dallas, who told everybody they were going to take them in the first round, the Steelers, the Jets.
I imagine you on the Steelers. Man.
So you went individually then. This was 78. They hadn't even dreamed of a combine, and ESPN didn't even exist. So what you did not name when you named in front of you, you didn't name that there were 8, and I count 8, including a tight end who came from Notre Dame, that the 49ers switched to defensive end. There were 8 defensive linemen that went before me, and it ticked me off.
Yeah.
I wore it on my shoulder. In fact, I still have it on my shoulder because I went 40th. I was the second pick in in the second round.
Yeah,
They had one of
40th.
those, I was the 40th pick. I was livid. I can't even tell you. And so the way the draft went back then, you got a call. And so after like the first 11 people, I think it was 3 linemen. I know Art Still had gone to Kansas City.
Yep.
And Art and I traveled together. And then there was a guy out of University of Colorado, and he was like the strongest human being in the world, but he couldn't play football. And I used to laugh at him. He went to Boulder, and I used to say, man, LaBelle Shorts built like Tarzan and played like Jane. He was always on the ground. He went before me to Denver. And then they drafted this tight end. Can't remember his name. His name was Kent something.
I'm going to look it up.
I called him Clark Kent because he was blonde haired, pretty. He was gorgeous. I think he wound up being a model. I know he did some movies, but they took him and put his hand down in the ground. I mean, like they did Christensen from the running back, moved him to tight end. They moved this guy from tight end to defensive end, and I was like, what? And they took him in front of me. So I'm now, Fredi, I'm crazy mad.
Yeah.
So I go for a walk, and they tell you to stay around for a phone call. That was it. And so I left my house. I went for a walk. I was literally, I'm not lying, I was crying. I was so mad I was crying, and I left. And my roommates were looking for me, and they called my mom's house in Newark. They called my mom, and my mama called the Moby gym, and it just so happened one of the coaches, he knew I ran, and I was walking my running course, which is up in the foothill. I was just walking thinking, well, where is this going, And I'm madder than a rattlesnake. His name was Mike Ackerley. Mike caught up to me, got in the car. He said 2 words to me, and I just bust out crying like a baby, and he turned to me. I'll never forget him saying this to me. Him and another coach who was a defensive back coach. They were career coaches named Tom Ellers. They said, that might just have been the best thing that ever happened to you. Now, I'm bawling. I'm so mad, Fredi. I'm tears of love. I'm talking, alligator tears. And I'm burning up. I'm filled with, anger. And the 2 of these guys, they were the ones that convinced me and said, well, I guess you'll be in the gym tomorrow. And that was what happened, man. It was May 2nd, 1978 that this occurred. And it changed my life that it didn't go the way I was expecting it to go. And then I wound up going to the team at the time. The Lions and the Pittsburgh Steelers were known as the worst paying teams. And I thought to boot, I go to the Lions, it was just like, really? And so later that afternoon, they set it up to get a phone call at the Moby gym. And I got a chance to speak with Floyd Peters. And I tell people this story. This is not a lie. Never met this guy in my life. First words out of his mouth was, well, I just want to let you know something. Nobody else wanted you. And he said, I fought for you to get here. And he said, I expect you to come here and play your ASS off. Those are the first words from Floyd. And he never disappointed from then on, because from the time that I met Floyd to the time that I played for him 11 years later in Minnesota, I thought my middle name was a 4-letter word. He was brutal. We nicknamed him Sergeant Rock. He had no
I remember him
whatsoever.
I was looking back at the draft that year for the Lions, and the first round pick they took that year. Do you remember who they took?
Luther Bradley.
Yeah,
from
Luther.
Notre Dame.
I don't really remember. I kind of remember him. Luther Bradley. Did he stick around with the Lions long? I don't remember.
Luther tore his hamstring, or he had an injury in camp.
Okay.
Now you got to understand, in defense of Luther, rookie camp was 4 weeks, and then veterans came in, and camp was 2 weeks, and then you broke camp. None of this girly stuff you hear about now.
Yeah.
In pads, in shorts. Every day it was 2 days.
Oh yeah.
Up at Oakland University, it was a new coach in Monty Clark. There were 2.5 practices. They were long. They were physical. and Luther hurt his leg, and Luther wound up getting behind. I don't know if he ever played. I know the first year, I don't think he played because the corners were Walt Williams, and the other guy was Wayne Smith, who they brought in, who got cut from somebody else. And Luther just never caught on that year. And back those days, once you got that title, you had to live it down by doing something spectacular. And I don't know if that ever occurred for Luther in his career. But Luther is a Detroit guy. He's a local guy. He's a community guy. He's a great guy.
Good.
And Fredi, that's football. That's pro football.
Well,
that's the way it rolls.
Yeah, and I look at that draft, and it's almost like Lions luck, not Luther Bradley luck, but Lions luck. They draft him in the first round. It doesn't work out. And then they take a guy from Michigan in the sixth round, Dwight Hicks, who ends up going to San Francisco and wins multiple Super Bowls.
Yep.
So, and then Jim Breach, a field goal kicker, he ended up playing in the Silverdome in the Super Bowl for Cincinnati a few years later. So, and you bring up Monty Clark in these two-a-days. I don't know if you remember, obviously, but Monty Clark didn't he play for Paul Brown? He was a tough offensive lineman. He was under Don Shula as offensive line coach. I think Bill Walsh, I think he was with San Francisco as well, too. So he was a tough-minded head coach. How was it playing for him?
Monty was a business-like head coach because he come under Don Shula. He coached offensive line for Shula and played for Paul Brown, which was arguably one of the greatest coaches, in terms of wins, losses. And you had to understand the defensive coordinator, his name was a guy by the name of Marty Schottenheimer.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you about him.
The defensive line coach was a guy by the name of Floyd Peters. They had a talented team. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but one of the guys that broke down film for that team, his name was Bill Belichick.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and so they had people inside the building. They had a guy by the name of Nick Saban. That was a
Chuck Knox
grad assistant. I mean, the Lions had all kinds of people in the buildings that, went on to pursue. So what I'm saying to you is there was always the talent there. There was always the ability. I think what lacked was Russ Thomas ran the football team. So he never really wanted to bring in a coach that was, in charge, if you will, with experience. You look back at Russ Thomas, every coach you brought in, it was always his first time because it was about power back then. Yeah. And I get it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not some genius of front office administration. But what I'm trying to say to you is Floyd Peters, we were under his leadership. And as long as we got to the quarterback, the year before I came to the Detroit Lions as a total defense, blitzes and all, they had 17 sacks. Needless to say, my rookie year I went on and had 23.
Yep.
I had more sacks in 1 year than they had as a team the year before previously. All that credit is due to Floyd, the way he drove us like mules, and he would not accept anything less than, your best. So we didn't have a lot of interaction, if you will. He would always say things like, Floyd, get them damn animals together of yours. Get your boys. And Floyd's way of coaching was always, you guys play like you play on Sunday. You're not going to hear a whole lot from me. Just don't ever come into my meetings without an ink pen and a pad so you can learn something new. There's that culture of constant improvement and, play like men on Sundays. And, he cursed you, he drove you, he ran you, he ran. If you broke your arm on Monday, this is Floyd, man. He would say, Baker, I know you broke your hand, but what's wrong with your legs? I'm like, you going to make me run and I got pins in my arm? He's like, hell, ain't nothing wrong with your legs. Line up. And you had to run 3 gassers. Yeah. That was Floyd. I mean, you got hurt. He turned his back. And, they tell you to pat yourself on the helmet when you want to come out when you're tired. Floyd turned his back on you. Like, I don't see nothing. And that was the way he trained us. We played hard for him. but he took care of us. Took care of us. So I didn't have a lot, but Marty Schottenheimer on defense and Floyd as the line coach. Monty always left the defense to those guys, and of course they all went on to have illustrious careers. And I know Monty was a consultant for the Lions, but Fredi, I want to say this. Don't ever forget, coaching in the National Football League is a very, very difficult job.
Yep.
Them cats get in at 6 o'clock in the morning and they go home. Most of them go home at 10, 11. Like these guys, like the LA Rams coach, I heard somewhere where they said he gets in at 5, he works out, and he leaves at midnight, and he lives an hour away from the stadium. And I was thinking, okay, so he's getting 4 hours of sleep. Are they encouraging that? Because he's going to burn out like Dave Vermel did.
Yes, you're right.
And that's what they look at now. They look back now in Cleveland. Mike Holmgren came on board, and he was an executive. And Mike Holmgren had a life coach. And Mike Holmgren would knock off on certain days and go home. And he would fly back and see his family on Tuesday. And when the Browns stalled and didn't win, that was their point of criticism. Well, he was never, ever in the building, So the guys that excel at it, they have that perfect balance. They know how to talk to a man. They know how to get the best out of him. And I couldn't coach, especially today's prima donnas. I mean, I certainly, Floyd couldn't coach. I know Floyd went up to be in pass rush heaven a few years back, but the way Floyd coached us and the way he pressed me and the way, he would curse you out, I mean, every highlight film I've ever seen of myself as a Detroit Lion, they got a picture of him standing in front of me. And I'm saying to my wife, can you see his lips? And my wife's like, yeah. She's like, I'm surprised you let him talk to you like that. I was like, yeah, actually, I took it out on the other guy. But Floyd, he talked to you in a manner. And see, Fredi, this is the important thing that I now know. Floyd only cared about one thing, and that was making you play football at a level that you couldn't play at on your own.
Yeah.
That was his whole motive. And so he knew with me, if he pissed me off, I was going to take it out on Steve Barkowski or Fran Tarkenton or Doug Williams. I mean, I had that thing on my shoulder from not being drafted. He knew it. He reminded me of it every Sunday.
So you brought up Marty Morningham, Marty. I brought up an ex-Lions coach, Marty Schottenheimer. You went on to play with him in Cleveland, and I want to ask you about that. Just a few more. I know I've taken a lot of your time, but
okay.
But I've got to ask you about. You went to the Cardinals. Jim Hannafin. He just passed away a couple of days ago. I'm sure you heard the news.
Yeah.
What was it like playing for him and the St. Louis Cardinals?
Hannafin was, without a question, probably the best coach I ever played for in terms of guys that when you hear him say that cliche, he got his guys to play for him.
Yeah. Jim
Hannafin was that guy. Hanny always had like a Sunday party, win, lose, or draw. We come back, we go back. There was this big old Mississippi boat on the on 2nd Street in St. Louis. We would all go there and we would eat, have hors d'oeuvres and socialize. And he had a philosophy that, he was going to coach you like he coached his offensive linemen. He was going to coach you up. So he never believed in tearing you down. And I had not, I had just left Detroit where it was, when we would lose, there was always a guy getting cut on Monday. It was just his environment. It was a tainted environment because we didn't win. And the National Football League is the worst place to be if you're failing. It's just, It's meant that way. It's the same thing as if you're injured. Nobody wants to be around you if you're injured. That, you're like a disease. And Hannafin was completely the opposite of that. He'd come and put his hands on your shoulder I broke my ankle. I didn't break. I chipped a bone in my ankle my first year there, and Floyd was there. That's how I wound up there. Floyd said, "Hey, we could really use him here." And Hannafin came up to me, and it was the first time this had ever happened to me. He put his hand on my shoulder, and he said something to the effect like, keep it in ice, and, we'll see, during the middle of the week. Well, that philosophy paid off because no one had ever treated me like that, right? And so I did everything in my possible power. And that following week, I was on the field. I was shot up and had pills and everything else in me. Yeah. But I showed up to play for him and wound up getting a game ball because he was that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Floyd, on the other hand, was, you cussing me out, that just standing around. It was Wednesday and I had a boot on.
And you played
Floyd's cursing me. He's telling me, how weak I am, and I was hungrier in Detroit, and here's Hannafin the other way, and I'll never forget Hannafin for that. He gave me a chance to prove to the Detroit Lions that yes, I am that player because I went on to be the MVP for them, and
yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And I moved to the left side, by the way. I moved from the right end to the left because they had a great guy from Michigan named Curtis Greer.
Yeah. Yes, I remember.
So,
yes.
I had a long career, and of those 13 years, the years that I spent in Detroit, they really were the best. They were, aside and apart from, I could not help myself. It's kind of like, I always tell this to people, it's kind of like a bad marriage. And most people that have a bad marriage, they know it a lot sooner than when they decide, hey, why don't we fold our cards and go our separate ways. I'm talking about an amicable. I'm not talking about any abuse or anything, but just when it just doesn't work, when people grow apart. We grew apart because I was going to Pro Bowls and I was hanging around guys from the Dallas Cowboys and guys from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I was seeing how winners act, and the Minnesota Vikings, and I was like, wow, we have none of this in Detroit. This is, you guys have catered food, and when I heard that, I was like, and I came back, I was kind of stuck. I came back and I was like, hey, I tell players, hey, up in Minnesota, man, they got a weight room and they get food catered in every day, and we were eating at Subway. Little things like that. Now they've corrected all that now, and they have a facility, but we were behind back then, and they were paying players to lift weights. That was something if you came in, you lift weights 3 days a week, you made which was a lot of money, like $350. Well, we weren't doing that in Detroit. Jeez. And I brought all that stuff back, and that's what kind of conversations I was having with Monty Clark and Russ Thomas, who they fell on deaf ears. Russ was like, hell, we already paid your contract. We're not going to pay you to lift weights. And I was like, yeah, but you're missing the camaraderie and all the things that go along with it. So, I loved playing for Detroit. I loved my teammates. I just had an aversion, and I still do. I break out in rashes when I lose, Fredi. I'm a horrible loser. Can't stand it.
Yeah. No, I mean, none of us really are. It's just the losing. I mean, we've seen it in this town. We've seen, we've seen it with Barry Sanders. We saw it with Calvin, and I might as well just ask you now, because Matthew Stafford. I mean, here's a guy who's been here 12 years. The team's never won a division. They never won a playoff game. He's, I mean, what would you say to Matthew Stafford if you were a fan? Just what would you say to him?
I would say the same thing that I say to Matthew Stafford when I'm up there, and when I come back for the
alumni
weekend, which is, I applaud the Lions for bringing us all together. I applaud Mrs. Ford and her family for bringing everybody together for that alumni weekend. I would say to Matthew Stafford, hey, bruh, you got one thing to do, and that is to play football.
Yeah.
You know, if I were to go back, if I could talk to Al Baker, the young 20-year-old, as the 63-year-old, I would say to him, hey, you know what, man, everything's going to be all right. You don't have to solve everybody else's problem. Do your job. You keep getting to the quarterback. You keep striving for excellence. You keep continuing to be a part of that culture of constant improvement. Stay hard on yourself. You know, continue to be your worst critic. Don't worry about what Moose O'Hara has to say about you. Worry about what you think when you watch film on Monday. And that's what I would say to Matthew Stafford. Don't worry. You're a man that's been through, your wife's had cancer, your family's together. You kept the Lions organization's respect. You know, you played injured with a broken bone in your back. Mm-hmm. You can't do anymore. And don't try to win it all by yourself, man. Try and hope and pray that before this is all over, you know, they'll put together a team and you can experience, like I heard the story of Dwight Howard, who celebrated being a part of the Lakers this year. And the guy had been around the NBA so long, people had forgot how many years he'd been in the league.
Yeah.
But he finally got a championship.
Yeah.
And he didn't have that star role that he had when he came in playing for the Magic. And Dwight Howard literally cried. I mean, you know, tears. And somebody was talking about it, and I was like, hey, I cried when 3 times we lost to Denver in Cleveland. I was proud of it. I cried like a little girl, you know, because we came so close. So, Fredi, it's all about that passion. And again, I want to go back to the Bubba and Bo Cooking show. That's what we're trying to bring out in our show. We're trying to create with our talking about the food that our grandmothers and my uncle and that, you know, we've made so many years in the Bubba's Q restaurants. Over the years, my daughter grew up doing that. It was part of our culture. It wasn't just something we did as a job. Same way with you in your business. You've been doing it 30 plus years. You don't do it that long if you're only in it for the money. You do it for the passion.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Bubba, last question for me is in 1987, you were part of the Ernest Biner fumble, the Cleveland-Denver game. You were a game from the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Do you remember that moment?
Fredi, you know how to bring up some nerves, man. I was actually on the field goal team, so I was down on the 20-yard line, you know, waiting to run in after we score, and my job was I was an in man because I had long arms.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was the guy that when the DB tried to go around, I'd shove him out. So I was actively there. I'm going to give you a little piece of something that not everybody knows. But Jeremiah Castilla, I had a home in Colorado up in Fort Collins. I ran into him. I played in one of his golf outings, charity golf item, and it was 10, 12 years after that game. And we were just kind of talking, it was boys. And he said, hey, Bubba, you want to hear something funny? And I said, yeah, tell me something funny, man. I said, because being around all these Broncos, ain't none of this funny. He said, I accidentally poked that ball out of Binder's arms.
Really?
It was an accident. It was trying to avoid Paul Farron. They put this play in. They knew they were going to get this coverage. If you remember that play, there was no one else over on that sideline. Ernest had he started high kneeing it because he was on his way in the end zone.
Yes, I remember.
Castilla was trying to avoid Paul, and Biner had the ball in his left hand, and Castilla just kind of reached through. And the only thing he did, if you remember, he never tackled Ernest. He just poked the ball out. The nose of the ball fell about 2 inches from the white goal line, and it didn't. If it would have gone in, it would have been a different story, right? It bounced backwards, and Denver fell on the ball. You talk about Lions luck. That was the Browns luck, man, because we had 3 years of that. We had 3 years where we went to the division championship. I was there.
You would have.
And then the year before that, they had the drive of John Elway.
Yeah, you were not there, but.
No, I wasn't there yet. I was still. That's when they traded for me because they needed a pass rush. But
but if you win that game, you would have faced the Redskins and Doug Williams in the Super Bowl. You would have beat them, right?
And I would have had to face them Hogs, and I don't think that would have turned out well. But it would have been an opportunity to show up and make them prove it.
That's
what I
right.
mean?
100%.
They were a really good football team, man.
Well, Bubba, listen, what an absolute joy to talk to you. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I do know this. Everyone that's listening, I've heard it 100 times. I'm going to hear it 100 million more times. You should be in the Hall of Fame, and I hope to God that day comes for you one day, very soon. And the Lions and the Browns, if they ever get to the Super Bowl, they are meant to play each other, right? And you're going to bring out the game ball.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fredi.
Check out the Bubba and Bo Show on YouTube and subscribe. Bubba, thank you. And when you come to town, please stop by. I just would love to sit and talk with you.
Man, I'm going to get some pizza first. We ain't talking. We're going to get some pizza. I'm going to buy a pizza off you. You're not giving me nothing free. I'm going to buy me some pizza, man. That's how it's supposed to work.
100%. Thank you so much, okay?
All right, brother. God bless you and have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Well, there was a thrill for me talking to L. Bubba Baker. I had so many more questions, but, just timing, the time goes by fast when you're having a good time. So, anyways, check out his show, the Bubba and Bo Show on YouTube, and subscribe. And remember, this show, Inside the Pizza Oven, is powered by Fredi, the PizzaMan Foundation for Autism. So please check out the website and donate and help us equip more sensory rooms in the state of Michigan. And subscribe and share iTunes and YouTube Inside the Pizza Oven. Thanks, guys.